The Galactic Concord had existed for millennia, a peaceful coalition of spacefaring species that had long ago outgrown their primitive warlike tendencies. When humans were discovered, the Concord observed them from afar, watching as they struggled through countless wars, environmental disasters, and social upheavals. It was Captain Lorne of the Concord exploration vessel Tranquil Dawn who first suggested bringing them into the fold early. "They're violent, yes," he explained to the Concord Council, his blue scales shimmering under the chamber lights. "But they're also remarkably adaptable. With proper guidance, they could become valuable members." The Council was hesitant. Humans were unpredictable, dangerous. But ultimately, they agreed with Lorne's assessment. Humans had potential, if properly controlled. First contact was arranged carefully. The Concord presented themselves as benevolent advanced beings, offering technological wonders and access to the stars in exchange for humanity's cooperation and resources. Earth's governments, after initial suspicion, eagerly accepted. The promise of interstellar travel, clean energy, and medical advancements was too tempting to refuse. Within a generation, humans were integrated into Concord society. They served aboard Concord vessels, worked in Concord facilities, and gradually spread throughout the galaxy. They were polite, hardworking, and appeared grateful for the opportunity. James Miller was one such human, serving as communications officer aboard the Concord diplomatic vessel Eternal Harmony. For 5 years, he had been the model crew member, punctual, respectful, and efficient. His superior, Commander Trelk, often praised him as an example of successful human integration. "You see," Trelk would tell visiting dignitaries, "with proper structure and guidance, even humans can be civilized." Miller would smile and bow slightly, playing his role perfectly. What Trelk didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Miller was more than a communications officer. He was part of an extensive human network spread throughout Concord space, silently observing, learning, and waiting. The waiting ended when Miller intercepted a classified transmission between Concord High Command vessels. He decrypted it using techniques humans had secretly developed, techniques the Concord believed beyond human capability. What he read chilled him to the bone. "Project Docility is ready for implementation. Begin Phase 1 on all human population centers within Concord space. The genetic modifications will ensure compliant behavior in current and future generations." Miller's hands trembled as he forwarded the message through the hidden human network. For years, they had suspected the Concord's ultimate intentions weren't as benevolent as they claimed. Now they had proof. In his quarters that night, Miller activated a secure communication device, disguised as a standard Concord personal terminal. "Control, this is Watchman. The harvest has begun. I repeat, the harvest has begun." The response came immediately. "Understood, Watchman. Operation Sleeping Giant is now active." Throughout Concord space, humans received the coded message. On thousands of vessels and hundreds of colonies, they quietly prepared for what would come next. The Concord had studied human history. They knew of human wars, human weapons, human violence. What they failed to understand was human deception, human patience, and human determination when fighting for survival. They believed humans were tame. They had never been more wrong. As Miller prepared for his shift the next day, he stared at his reflection in the mirror. His expression was pleasant, subservient, exactly what the Concord expected. But his eyes held a cold resolve that would have alarmed any Concord official who knew what to look for. "They should have left us alone," he whispered to himself. "They should have just left us alone." Admiral Vex of Concord High Command reclined in his private chambers aboard the flagship Inevitable Progress. Reports from across Concord space showed that Project Docility was proceeding without incident. Soon the human problem would be permanently solved, not through violence, which the Concord had long ago rejected, but through biochemical engineering. Future generations of humans would be docile, compliant, and utterly incapable of the violence that had marked their species' history. "A mercy, really," Vex murmured to himself. "They'll be happier this way." The ship's alarm shattered his contemplation. "Admiral," his first officer's voice came through the comm. "We've lost contact with the research station at Proxima Centauri." Vex frowned. "Communications malfunction." "Unknown, sir." The station simply went offline. Within the hour, reports of similar outages flooded in from across Concord space. Human staff facilities, research stations, and colonies were going dark one by one. When communications resumed with some locations, the transmissions contained only automated all-clear messages. Captain Tora of Concord Intelligence stood before Vex in his command center, her expression grave. "Sir, we're detecting unusual movement patterns among human crew members across the fleet. Nothing overtly suspicious, but, Vex prompted. Their behavior is coordinated, as if responding to instructions we can't detect." Vex dismissed her concerns. "Impossible. Human communications are completely monitored." He activated the ship-wide comm. "This is Admiral Vex. All human crew members will report to medical facilities immediately for routine health screenings." Across the massive vessel, humans acknowledged the order with perfect compliance. They showed no resistance, no questions, exactly as expected from a properly integrated species. Lieutenant Ray Wilson, Engineering Division, was among the first humans to report to medical. He submitted to the scan with a pleasant smile, then returned to his post in the ship's power distribution center. Once there, Wilson met the eyes of his human colleagues. No words were exchanged. None were needed. They had trained for this moment for years, passing down instructions through an elaborate system of seemingly innocent gestures, phrases, and behaviors the Concord monitors never recognized as communication. Wilson opened his personal kit and removed what appeared to be standard engineering tools. When assembled correctly, however, they formed a device unknown to Concord security protocols. He connected it to the power distribution network and entered a sequence of commands. Throughout the inevitable progress, systems began to fail in seemingly random patterns. Backup protocols activated, then failed themselves. Emergency containment procedures initiated in unaffected sections, creating chaos and confusion. On the bridge, Vex watched in growing alarm as his ship tore itself apart from within. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Unknown, Admiral," his officer replied. "It's as if the ship is fighting itself." In engineering, Wilson and his team worked with practiced efficiency, their movements precise and coordinated. The Concorde had studied human warfare, tanks, missiles, armies clashing on open fields. They had never understood that humans excelled most at asymmetric conflict, at turning an enemy's strength against itself. Across Concord space, the pattern repeated. On planets, space stations, and vessels, humans executed their long-prepared plans. They didn't seize weapons or attack Concord personnel directly. Instead, they simply disrupted. Security systems identified non-existent threats. Environmental controls created uninhabitable conditions in Concord quarters while leaving human sections untouched. Communication networks carried false information or nothing at all. The Concorde's technological superiority became its greatest vulnerability as the systems they depended on turned against them, subverted by the very humans they had taught to operate them. Wilson looked at the chronometer. Phase 1 was complete. Phase 2 would begin shortly. Dr. Anna Reed walked calmly through the corridors of the Concorde's premier biological research facility on Europa. As the facility's human liaison, she had access to nearly every section, including the heavily secured labs where Project Docility had been developed. The facility was in disarray. Communication with Concorde Command had been sporadic for days, and the non-human staff were increasingly agitated. Dr. Reed maintained her composure, offering reassurances that the situation would soon be resolved. "Just a technical issue," she told the facility director, a tall Meridian named Pell. "I'm sure Concorde Command will restore full communication soon." Pell's eye ridges furrowed with concern. "Perhaps. In the meantime, we should accelerate Project Docility deployment. If there is unrest, A wise precaution. Reed agreed smoothly. I'll prepare the human staff for processing immediately. She left Pell's office and made her way to the secure laboratory. The Concord guards nodded respectfully as she passed. After 5 years of exemplary service, Dr. Reed was beyond suspicion. They didn't notice how her hand trembled slightly as she entered her access code. Inside the lab, Reed moved with purpose. From her pocket, she removed a data crystal containing a virus designed by the human resistance. Not a biological virus, but a digital one that would corrupt the project docility formula. The Concord believed humans were still adapting to advanced technology, incapable of creating something that could bypass their security. Another miscalculation. Reed inserted the crystal into the main console and began the upload. As she worked, the lab door opened. She turned to see Pell standing in the doorway, 4 security officers behind him. "Dr. Reed," Pell said quietly, "step away from the console." Reed's hand moved toward her pocket where a small pulse weapon was hidden. "Please don't," Pell said. "Violence is unnecessary." Reed froze, then slowly raised her hands. "How did you know?" "We've been monitoring unusual patterns in human behavior across Concord space. When our communications began failing, I reviewed your access logs. You've been gathering information on Project Docility for months." Reed's mind raced through contingency plans. The digital virus was still uploading. She needed just 30 more seconds. "You're right, Pell," she said, taking a step toward him. "I've been gathering information because I'm concerned. Project Docility violates the terms of humanity's agreement with the Concord. You promised partnership, not subjugation." Pell's expression softened slightly. "It's not subjugation, Anna. It's improvement. Humans suffer from their violent tendencies. We're helping you evolve past them." "Without our consent," Reed countered. "That's not help. It's control." The console behind her beeped softly. Upload complete. Reed allowed herself a small smile. "What have you done?" Pell demanded, suddenly alert. "Ensured that Project Docility will never work as intended," Reed answered. "The formula has been corrupted. Any attempt to use it will be instantly recognizable to humans. They'll know they're being manipulated." Pell signaled the guards. "Take her to containment and initiate emergency protocols on the Project Docility database. We need to determine what she's changed." As the guards approached, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. The lights flickered, then switched to emergency power. "What's happening?" Pell demanded. One of the guards checked his communicator. "Sir, we're detecting multiple breaches. Human staff in sections 5, 8, and 12 air." The communication cut off abruptly. Reed smiled. That would be Phase 3. Across the facility, human staff who had been waiting for Reed's signal were now implementing the next stage of their plan. They weren't seizing control. They were creating calculated chaos, using the Concord's own protocols against them. Pell stared at Reed with new understanding. "This isn't just happening here, is it?" "No," Reed replied. "It's happening everywhere. You thought you knew us, understood us. You studied our wars, our weapons, our violence. But you never understood what makes humans truly dangerous." "And what is that?" Pell asked quietly. "We cooperate. We plan. We adapt," Reed said. "And we never, ever surrender our freedom." The Concord Council convened an emergency session for the first time in 3 centuries. The 12 representatives of the founding species gathered in their orbital chamber above the Concord homeworld, their expressions grave. "The situation is unprecedented," stated Representative Morn of the Vexillian species. "Human disruption has spread to 63% of Concord territories. Our attempts to implement containment protocols have been ineffective." "Ineffective is an understatement," snapped Representative Drell of the Sartorians. "The humans have turned our own systems against us. The more technologically advanced the installation, the more vulnerable it has proven." Grand Arbiter Cole, the eldest member of the council, raised a gnarled hand for silence. "We must understand what we're facing. This is not a military uprising." At least not in any traditional sense. The humans have launched no attacks, fired no weapons. They have simply created dysfunction, a distinction without difference. Drell countered. The result is the same. Concord authority has been undermined. On screens surrounding the chamber, reports continued to stream in from across Concord space. Stations operating at minimal capacity. Ships unable to navigate properly. Communication networks carrying only human-approved messages. And everywhere, humans continuing to perform their duties with apparent cooperation, while the systems around them inexplicably malfunctioned. "We have a communication request," announced the Council's eye assistant, from a human identifying himself as Thomas Carter. The Council members exchanged glances. "Display," ordered Cole. The central hologram activated, showing a middle-aged human male in standard Concord civilian attire. His expression was pleasant, unthreatening. "Honored representatives of the Concord," he began with a respectful nod. "Thank you for accepting my communication. You claim to speak for the humans responsible for this insurrection?" asked Cole. Carter smiled slightly. "I speak for the human cooperative. And what's happening isn't an insurrection, it's a negotiation." "Negotiation typically precedes action," Drell said coldly. "You have already acted. Only after discovering your intention to fundamentally alter our species without consent," Carter replied, his voice hardening slightly. "Project Docility violated every agreement between humanity and the Concord." Several council members shifted uncomfortably. The project had been approved by a narrow margin, with many expressing ethical concerns. "What do you want?" asked Morn pragmatically. "Three things," Carter answered. "First, immediate cessation of all biochemical programs designed to alter human cognition or behavior. Second, recognition of human autonomy within the Concord framework. Third, human representation on this council." The chamber erupted in protests. Cole silenced them with a raised hand. "Your demands are unprecedented." "So is our situation," Carter said. "You brought us into the galactic community before we would have naturally arrived there. You shaped our development, guided our integration, but you never truly accepted us as equals." "Equality must be earned," said Drell. "Humans have existed in interstellar society for barely a generation. The founding species spent millennia proving their stability and wisdom." Carter's expression remained calm. "Perhaps. But you need to understand something crucial about humans, something your anthropological studies missed. We don't just accept the social order we're born into. We question it, challenge it, and when necessary, change it." He leaned forward slightly. "Right now, human operators throughout Concord space are demonstrating just a fraction of our capability for disruption. We don't want to destroy the Concord. We believe in its mission of peaceful cooperation. But we will not accept second-class status or biochemical pacification." "And if we refuse your demands?" asked Cole. "Then the disruptions will increase in scope and intensity," Carter replied simply. "Not as a threat, but as a natural consequence. Humans cannot and will not accept subjugation. It's fundamentally contrary to our nature." The council chamber fell silent as the representatives absorbed his words. Finally, Morn spoke. "We request time to deliberate." "Of course," Carter said. "You have 24 hours. After that, Phase 4 begins." The transmission ended. Cole looked around the chamber at his fellow representatives. "It seems we have gravely misunderstood our human colleagues." "We can still contain this," Drell insisted. "Deploy security forces to all critical installations. Remove human personnel." "And replace them with whom?" interrupted Morn. "Humans now constitute 30% of our technical workforce. Many systems have been modified to accommodate their specific operational patterns. We cannot simply remove them without causing even greater disruption." In the silence that followed, the council faced an uncomfortable truth. In their effort to guide and control humanity's development, they had made themselves dependent on the very species they sought to subdue. Major Lisa Donovan moved silently through the ventilation system of the Concord military outpost on Mars. Unlike most human resistance actions, this one required direct infiltration. The outpost housed the only quantum entanglement communicator in the Sol system, technology the Concorde had never shared with humans. Behind her crawled Private Mark Thompson, carrying specialized equipment in a reinforced case. Both wore adaptive camouflage suits developed in secret human laboratories. Another technology the Concorde believed beyond human capability. Junction ahead. Donovan whispered into her comm. Team 2, status. In position, came the reply from Captain Alex Rivera, who was leading the diversionary team. Ready on your mark. Execute in 3, 2, 1. Mark. Throughout the outpost, environmental systems suddenly reported toxic contamination in non-essential areas. Alarm protocols activated automatically, drawing security personnel away from the central communication hub. Donovan and Thompson reached the access point above the quantum entanglement chamber. Using a device that interfered with Concorde motion sensors, they silently removed the ventilation grate and dropped into the room. Two Concorde technicians looked up in shock. Before they could react, Donovan activated a neural disruptor, non-lethal, but immediately incapacitating. The technicians collapsed unconscious. 14 minutes until they realized the contamination alert is false, Thompson said, checking his timer. Maybe less if someone gets suspicious. Then let's not waste time, Donovan replied, moving to the central console. She connected a human-designed interface to the quantum entanglement communicator, a device that should have been incompatible with Concorde technology. But humans had been studying Concorde systems for years, reverse engineering their principles while appearing to struggle with even basic operations. Thompson opened his case and removed the quantum encryption module, the result of 5 years of clandestine research by human scientists embedded within Concorde facilities. He connected it to Donovan's interface, initiating transmission to all human outposts. Donovan said, fingers flying across the improvised control panel. Quantum encryption active. The quantum entanglement communicator hummed to life, transmitting data instantaneously across Concorde space through connections the Concorde themselves had established. But now these connections carried information they couldn't detect or decrypt. Direct human-to-human communication beyond Concorde monitoring. Throughout human settlements, resistance cells received detailed instructions for the next phase of operations. Unlike previous phases focused on disruption, Phase 4 would demonstrate humanity's true potential as allies rather than subjects. Transmission complete, Donovan announced. Disconnecting. As they packed up their equipment, the facility's main alarm suddenly blared. They've detected us, Thompson said tensely. Donovan activated her comm. Team 2, we need extraction. Primary route compromised. Understood, Rivera replied. Moving to contingency Bravo. 60 seconds to your position. Donovan turned to Thompson. Change of plans. No time for stealth. From her pack, she removed what appeared to be standard Concorde sonic grenades, but modified with human innovations. She set them around the quantum communicator. What are you doing? Thompson asked. The plan was to leave no trace. That was before they detected us, Donovan replied. Now we need them focusing on repair, not pursuit. She activated the devices. These won't destroy the communicator, just disable it temporarily. The Concorde will assume that was our objective all along. They heard footsteps approaching rapidly. Donovan checked her weapon, a last resort she hoped not to use. The resistance leadership had been clear. Lethal force only when absolutely necessary. This wasn't about starting a war. It was about forcing recognition. The chamber door began to open. Simultaneously, the ventilation grate on the opposite wall crashed inward. Rivera and his team had arrived through a maintenance shaft. Time to go, Rivera called, tossing smoke canisters into the corridor. As Concorde security forces entered through the main door, Donovan and Thompson were already disappearing into the maintenance shaft. Behind them, the modified sonic grenades activated, emitting precisely calibrated pulses that overloaded the quantum communicator's sensitive components without permanently damaging them. By the time the Concord forces secured the chamber, the humans were already boarding their concealed shuttle, hidden in a geological formation 2 kilometers from the outpost. Mission accomplished, Donovan reported as the shuttle lifted off, its stealth systems rendering it invisible to Concord sensors. Phase 4 is now active across all sectors. Across Concord space, humans began implementing the next stage of their carefully orchestrated plan, not to seize power, but to demonstrate what true cooperation between equals could achieve. Admiral Vex stood on the observation deck of the inevitable progress, watching as teams of engineers, both Concord and human, worked together to restore the ship's systems. After days of dysfunction, the human crew members had suddenly offered their assistance in resolving the technical issues they had helped create. "I don't understand," Vex said to his first officer. "Yesterday they were sabotaging us. Today they're helping repair the damage." "Not just here, sir," the officer replied. "Reports from across Concord space indicate the same pattern. Human operatives are actively assisting in restoring functionality to critical systems." Vex's communication panel chimed. "Admiral, the Council is requesting your presence at an emergency session." When Vex arrived at the virtual Council chamber, he found all 12 representatives already present, along with an unexpected addition: Thomas Carter, the human who had delivered their demands. "Admiral," Grand Arbiter Cole acknowledged. "Thank you for joining us. We were just discussing the evolution of the current situation." "Evolution is an interesting choice of words," Vex replied cautiously. "The humans appear to be demonstrating both their ability to disrupt and to restore. A calculated display of power." "Not power," Carter interjected. "Potential. There's a crucial distinction." Representative Drell, who had been the most vocal opponent of human integration, leaned forward. "Explain this distinction, human." "With pleasure," Carter said. "For the past 72 hours, humans across Concord space demonstrated our capacity to disrupt your operations without violence, without destruction. Now we're demonstrating something more important: our value as true partners." He gestured, and holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing data from across Concord territories. In the Arcturus sector, human engineers have implemented efficiency protocols that increase power generation by 23%. At the Rigel Medical Facility, human researchers have adapted Concord's cellular regeneration technology to treat conditions previously considered untreatable. On New Terra, human agricultural specialists have modified Concord cultivation techniques to increase yield by 40%. The council members studied the data in silence. "These aren't new developments," Carter continued. "Humans have been developing these innovations for years. But we were limited by our restricted access to Concord systems and by the assumption that we couldn't possibly improve upon technologies thousands of years more advanced than our own." "Why share these innovations now?" asked Morn. "Why not use them as bargaining chips?" "Because that's not the relationship we want," Carter replied simply. "We don't seek to extort concessions through threat or bribery. We want to demonstrate what's possible when humans are treated as true partners rather than subordinates to be controlled." Admiral Vex studied the human carefully. "You orchestrated a galaxy-wide disruption of Concord operations. Actions that could be considered acts of war. To make this point, we responded to the discovery that the Concord planned to biochemically alter our species without consent," Carter corrected. "But yes, we chose a response that would demonstrate both our capabilities and our restraint." Cole raised a hand. "The Council has been deliberating since your initial communication, Mr. Carter. Recent events have informed those deliberations. We are prepared to accede to your first demand. All biochemical modification programs targeting humans will be immediately terminated." "Thank you," Carter said with a respectful nod. "As for your second demand, recognition of human autonomy within the Concord framework, we propose the establishment of a human directorate with authority over human settlements and personnel operating within broader Concord structures." Carter nodded again. "That would be acceptable, provided the directorate has meaningful authority. However, Call continued, your third demand, human representation on this council, presents greater challenges. The founding species earned their positions through millennia of demonstrated wisdom and stability. With respect, Carter replied, those species developed at their own pace on their own terms. Humanity was brought into interstellar society centuries before we would have achieved it independently. You accelerated our development, but refused to acknowledge our maturation. The council chamber fell silent as the representatives considered his words. Finally, Vex spoke. The human makes a valid point. We cannot hold them to the same timeline as species that developed naturally when we ourselves disrupted that timeline. Drell's expression showed surprise at Vex's support for the human position. Admiral, surely you of all people. I of all people have seen what humans can do, both as adversaries and as allies, Vex interrupted. In the past week, they have demonstrated capabilities we believed beyond them, restraint we didn't think they possessed. And now, innovations we never anticipated. Perhaps it is we who have failed to evolve in our understanding. 1 year later, the newly constructed Human Directorate headquarters on Earth hummed with activity. In the central chamber, Director Thomas Carter stood before a holographic display showing the status of human operations across Concord space. Representatives from various human settlements and installations were present both physically and virtually for the quarterly coordination meeting. The transition continues to proceed smoothly, reported Lisa Donovan, now serving as Security Director. Integration of human security protocols with Concord systems is at 93% completion. Incidents of friction between human and non-human personnel have decreased by 64% since implementation of the Cultural Exchange Program. Carter nodded appreciatively, and the innovation initiatives. James Miller, who had served as one of the first undercover operatives and now headed the Technology Integration Division, stepped forward. 17 major technological collaborations are currently underway. The Human Meridian Joint Team has made significant breakthroughs in quantum communication stability. The Human Vexillian Medical Research has entered clinical trials for the Universal Immunological Support System. Excellent, Carter said. And what about Project Renaissance? Anna Reed, who had been promoted to Chief Scientific Liaison, activated a separate display. The first generation of dual-design vessels will begin construction next month. These ships incorporate both Concord efficiency and human adaptability in their core systems. Truly the first technology designed as a partnership rather than an adaptation. The meeting continued with reports from various divisions, all indicating the same pattern. Where humans and Concord species worked as equals, innovation flourished. When the meeting concluded, Carter found Admiral Vex waiting in his office, now serving as the Concord's primary liaison to the Human Directorate. Impressive reports, Vex commented. The Council will be pleased. Carter smiled. Still monitoring us closely. I see. Prudent oversight, not monitoring. Vex corrected with what passed for a smile among his species. Though I admit, some Council members remain cautious about the pace of human integration. Representative Drell, I assume. Among others. Vex settled into a chair designed to accommodate his physiology, one of many small changes reflecting the new relationship. Some feel that humans have gained too much influence too quickly. Carter sat across from him. A year ago, the Concord was planning to biochemically alter our species to make us more compliant. Today, we have autonomy, partnership, and a pathway to Council representation. From certain perspectives, that could seem rapid. From certain perspectives, it could seem like capitulation to threats, Vex countered. Carter's expression grew serious. Is that how you see it, Admiral? Vex was silent for a moment before responding. I see it as education. The Concord has existed for so long that we forgot what it means to encounter a truly independent intelligence, one that cannot be easily categorized or controlled. He gestured toward the window, where Earth was visible below. We studied your wars, your weapons, your conflicts. We thought we understood human violence and how to contain it. What we failed to comprehend was that same capacity redirected toward cooperation, innovation, and determined resistance. "We're not naturally violent or naturally peaceful," Carter said. "We're naturally adaptive. We become what we need to be to survive and thrive." "A dangerous quality," Vex observed. "Only if you make yourself our adversary," Carter replied. "As allies, that same quality becomes your greatest asset." Vex nodded slowly. "The Council is beginning to understand this. Your handling of the Proxima Centauri refugee crisis demonstrated that humans can indeed contribute wisdom as well as innovation." He rose to leave but paused at the door. "One question, Director Carter. During what you called Phase 4, when humans across Concord space suddenly began implementing improvements to our systems, was that truly spontaneous, or had those innovations been developed and held in reserve long before?" Carter smiled. "Would you believe me if I said it was spontaneous?" "No," Vex admitted. "Then I won't insult your intelligence by claiming it was," Carter replied. "Humans have been developing ways to improve Concord technology since we first gained access to it. We held those improvements in reserve, not as leverage, but as insurance, proof of our value if our autonomy was ever threatened." Vex's expression showed new understanding. "You never intended to leave the Concord." "Never," Carter confirmed. "Isolation isn't our goal. Partnership is. Equal partnership." After Vex departed, Carter stood at the window, looking out at the Earth below and the stars beyond. Humanity had come dangerously close to becoming nothing more than obedient servants in the galactic community, biochemically altered into compliance, their essential nature erased in the name of peace. Instead, they had demonstrated what the Concord had failed to understand: that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their capacity for violence, which the Concord had feared, or their technological innovation, which the Concord had dismissed. It was their fundamental refusal to accept limitations imposed by others, combined with their ability to cooperate toward common goals. The Concord had thought humans were tame. They had been wrong. But in discovering that error, they had gained something far more valuable than obedient subjects. They had gained partners who could help them evolve beyond the stagnation of certainty into the dynamic potential of true collaboration. Across Concord space, humans and non-humans worked together under this new paradigm, building something neither could have created alone. It wasn't the future the Concord had planned, but it was, perhaps, the future they needed. The humans hadn't come to destroy the galactic order. They had come to transform it, not through conquest or violence, but through their stubborn, persistent, uniquely human insistence that there was always a better way forward, if only you were brave enough to find it.